Well, thank you. It is 8 o'clock on Tuesday, February 16th. It's above 0 degrees. I just want that noted for the record. I might actually leave the house today. I don't think I stepped outside once yesterday. So let's call this meeting to order. Olivia, would you complete the roll call, please?
Yes. We have Cameron Grant, Tom DeBee, Arlene Zortman, Lauren Selly, Jean Christopher, Lisa Gallinar, Polly Christensen, Kathy Fedler, Harold Dominguez, and Kendra Daniels.
Thank you. Welcome, Polly. It's good to see you. Item number 2, approval of the minutes from our January 19th, 2021 meeting. Those were in the packet. Do we have any updates, corrections, or comments regarding the January 19th minutes?
I move to approve them.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, all in favor, thumbs up. Any opposed? None opposed. Those are considered approved. Item number 3 is public invited to be heard. And before the meeting started, we were notified that there has been no one contacting us requesting to be heard. So unless anyone has shown up in the last minute and a half, we will move on to item number 4, new and old business. And item 4A is review and adopt electronic participation policy for City of Longmont Board and Commission meetings. And that was included in your packet. Is there anyone on staff that wants to give a bit of background on this?
I think Karen was going to do this one, but let me jump in.
And I'm not sure Karen has joined us yet.
Yeah, I'm wondering if she's having technical issues. Let me pull that up. So generally on this one, we created, just for you all, sort of some of the backstory on this one. As we moved into the COVID world and we had to have the electronic meetings via Zoom, we created a, sorry, somebody's calling me on Teams. We created this electronic policy. And if you notice in the first paragraph, emergency circumstances under which City of Longmont or Commission may participate in board or commission meeting by telephone or other electronic means of participation, such as video conferencing. And then we outline the emergency situations in terms of where this can be enacted. Obviously, for me, is determining that a meeting in person is not practical or prudent. Everyone can hear one another. And then you can see the point on the public where they can hear it, and at least one board or commission is present unless not feasible due to the pandemic or disaster. So this is really just pulling together what we've been doing. We've put this in place for the city council. We put it in place for all our other boards and commissions, and we just felt like we needed to add that for you all.
I think that makes good sense since we're operating in that fashion anyway.
Right.
Does anyone have any questions, or can I entertain a motion to approve the policy? Tom?
Yeah, I had a question. So number 5 says all votes are conducted by roll call. I mean, is that, have they really been doing that during the meetings, or is it, I mean, as long as you could see them and hear them, is that acceptable?
If you can see them and hear them, it's acceptable. Our city clerk, sometimes if you watch the council meetings, they'll have to go, okay, who voted for what, to make sure that it's clear. But yeah, it needs to be clear, and we do that in a number of ways. So
Okay, all right.
Do we have a motion?
I will move to approve.
Second.
So Jean moved, Arlene seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thumbs up, roll call. It's unanimously approved. So we will move on to item 4B, advisory board members and resident engagement, and discussing ideas for the Housing Authority Board to participate in that to ensure communication between resident, staff, and board. So this is an issue that we first started discussing, gosh, I don't know how long, a year or so ago, maybe a little bit less, and it got lost during the COVID time. But Arlene wisely reminded me about this, and so we thought we ought to put it on the agenda for discussion. And I think the concept was that there's some real value in communication, and that over the years there might have been less communication between the board in particular, and maybe others on staff, and our residents. And so we wanted to bring this back for discussion to explore ways we might kind of stimulate this type of connection. And so what I think I'll do, I'll turn it over to Arlene to get her initial thoughts and see where we take this. Arlene?
Okay. When I was able to visit some of the facilities earlier last year, one of the things that came up was that it would be nice if there were meetings where people could get together with board members and, staff and just kind of talk about maybe some concerns or what's going good, that type of a thing. And I just kind of wanted to follow up on that because I think it's an excellent idea. However, as long as we have to do it this way, virtual, I'm not sure that we'd get that many people to participate as compared to if we actually met on each one of the facilities and open it up to the people that were there. So I think it's important to do. I'm just not sure when we can get going on it.
I wonder if there's some value to, even though this is a difficult time for everybody to connect and communicate, there's some value just to having the option, even if only a handful of people take advantage of it. That might be an opportunity for somebody who has a significant issue they want to discuss to reach out to us. Otherwise, they have to wait around until 8 a.m. on the second Tuesday or third Tuesday, whatever the date is, and go from there.
Do any of the facilities have places where they've got computers set up so people could actually go in and get on there rather than have to deal with it from home? It might be easier for them to do it that way. Your computer labs?
I'm trying to think. Some do, and I'm trying to. I know that was something we were working on in Aspen Meadows apartments, and there's Karen. And some do, some don't, I think is the answer. Karen?
Thanks, Harold. So I would say a couple things. Yeah. So one, some of the computer labs that were in operation, the equipment got so old over time, that they really were no longer usable. So there is a couple things that we're doing. Number one is, we are working with Hearthstone and Lodge, since they now have, broadband or basically next night internet as part of their utilities. So we are working with them in the senior center in giving folks Chromebooks to be able to have access for people who don't have that technology. And we're also looking at a checkout system of Chromebooks at the suites, again, because they do have the internet. Actually, we weren't able to get the internet at Hearthstone Lodge. Sorry, I'm incorrect. But so we are looking at how, through a combination of Chromebooks that the senior center can give away and those that we can check out, that was available through the CARES Act because we couldn't give them away. So we're trying to at least enhance access to devices for folks who don't have that. So we're continuing to look, I guess, Arlene, at ways to address the digital divide, because it is certainly an issue that we are concerned about and continue to look for resources to address those. And I think the other thing is that at some point you might want to invite Lisa to talk a little bit about what she and the community managers are starting to do to reach out and connect with residents. So bit by bit, as we can loosen things up a little bit, they are trying some different ways to engage. So at some point in this conversation, I would invite Lisa to participate, to chime in.
And then if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen with you all and show you where we are so you can see what part of we're going to be dealing with. So in this, you can see obviously we're in the yellow dial, 1 week 116.1. We're in blue in terms of average positivity. Stable hospital, this is moving, and this is because you always anchor against low numbers. And so what I will tell you is, while it looks like our hospitalizations are going up, we're still significantly lower than where we were before. And so this one, you have to understand that piece. But even if we move into blue, and you look at gatherings, even in blue, it's up to 10 from no more than 2 households. So even when we move to blue, I mean, that's going to be a challenge, and we'll have to. So generally, you could probably only have, under this, the way this is described, 2 people together who are from different units. And so this is the challenge that we're going to have ongoing. And so what I even thought about finding a way to get a projector with a camera so we could talk to larger groups. Still won't work with the way the rules are working based on how you can get people together because of the household size. And so I think we are going to have to work on finding a way to get people to connect. But I think Lisa needs to talk about what they're doing to try to bridge that gap in the interim.
Well, we did have Michelle go through, because she's really involved with Boulder County Health Department, go through the guidelines, and we were allowed to have gatherings in like community areas, social distance. So we did groups over at the Hearthstone and the Lodge, did 15-minute gatherings with 6 household members and a couple staff members, and we set chairs 10 feet apart. So it allowed people to come in. Then we did these meetings every 10 minutes. So we had time to sanitize the whole the whole area, get the next group in, go through the same agenda, sanitize, and go on. And we did 6 groups at each of the Hearthstone and the Lodge over 2 days.
Okay, I like that idea, and I would be more than glad to participate if it was an option with you guys. It sounds like a lot of work, but it also sounds like something that I like the idea of moving ahead with.
Lauren's been patiently waiting with her digital hand raised.
What about outdoors? I have 2 things. I think when the weather gets better, obviously not now, but maybe when things warm up, if we're able to do it outdoors, we'll be able to have more people, lots more people. And it might be nice, to get some fresh air coming up from all this year. The other thing I wanted to mention was for any locations that either don't have great internet access or, we're having trouble getting technology into the hands of residents. Boulder County AAA Area Agency on Aging is launching a program called Connect with Tech, where they will match Chromebooks and hotspots for 6 months of internet. They just did contract. I just approved some contracts for it, so I happen to know that this is coming. But you could reach out to their organization to see if that's something that we could point our residents to for those who don't qualify for City of Longmont type services. It is for older people, but depending on where they live, that might be a great option.
That's a great program, and Lauren, as Lisa mentioned, Michelle Waite, who's our senior services manager, is connected with the AAA for Boulder County.
Perfect.
And that program and the folks that are running that. So that's a great reminder that we're trying to tap into all the different resources to try to help get either internet or tech devices in the hands of folks who don't have them, so that they can connect. But that's a great reminder.
Yeah. And the nice thing is training is involved with this program too.
Right.
So it'll teach people how to get online and use the technology, which is probably a bigger barrier sometimes than getting the technology itself.
So I'm wondering if we need to kind of wait until maybe June-ish or so to take a look at this again. And I don't know. Right now it's so cold. It's, yeah.
If you all want,
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I really like the suggestion of just, making sure Lisa is aware that we are interested and available. But I think whatever we do needs to dovetail in with how she and her team are managing each of those communities. But, so first of all, we're available. And second of all, I think that there are a lot of ways to communicate that we may or may not be on top of. I've never been to one, but I've seen reference to the Coffee with Council popping back up. So I don't know if that's all on Zoom or if you're doing that, outdoors at an actual coffee shop. But I think that's a similar concept. And I know our population may have more challenges on technology than the general population. But I think it's just, I'm in favor of providing an opportunity, holding ourselves out to Lisa and letting her know that if she thinks it's appropriate within her management umbrella, that we'd love to do it.
And to answer your question, we're doing the Coffee with Councils remotely. First one was interesting because they have to call in because of just the open-ended piece in this. We could rethink that in a different way because it's a captive, for lack of a better word. We know who we need to invite. And so we can invite people from the facilities, which makes that a little bit easier than what we had to do on the Coffee with Council. And I think there's ways we can do it. Also, so everyone knows, many of the affordable internet programs that we've established, I think there's a 100 meg program for $19 now. And then we have other affordable opportunities via Nextlight. Those are all, if we have Nextlight in facilities, those are available for the people that live in the facilities. The difference in this case is the suites. We were able to do a bulk deal where we're paying for it because of the requirements associated with the supportive services. So we're paying for internet connectivity there. One of the things I talked to Karen about, I'm kind of getting into the ops report a little bit, but to answer this question, Nextlight's also working with some folks that have different TV options. And so we're trying to understand what that looks like. So even if we don't do the bulk deals for the facilities, residents have the ability to take advantage of some of these lower cost options for Nextlight if it's available. And I think we're almost every place in some form or fashion. It's a matter of getting them into the units.
So I think the other thing that I would just add to this is that connecting with our residents after this really long year is certainly top of mind for Lisa, the team, our new team of community managers. I think for the entire organization is figuring out ways we can start connecting with our residents in whatever way is possible. So we're checking the dial, the public health dial. The residents are saying, when are we going to open back up community areas? So we're checking all that, and so it is top of mind for the staff. And I think we will continue to look for opportunities. We are also working on a kind of a newsletter option too, and so that also might be a way, albeit kind of a one-way communication, but it could be ways that the board can at least reach out in that way. So we will make sure that we're talking about it and continuing to explore opportunities as they evolve with the pandemic.
Well, that sounds good. Thank you, Arlene, for bringing this up again and for the discussion. I think it's time we start to focus on some of the things that we have forgotten about over the past 10 months, and this is an important first step. So if there are no other discussion items on 4B, why don't we move on to 4C, which is an update on the voluntary compliance agreement. And there is a brief letter in your packet, brief in terms of, I don't know how many, oh my gosh. Brief 18-page letter, something like that.
Not that brief.
So I'm hoping someone will give us a summary of this.
That would probably be me. So this is the first annual report to HUD, giving an update on the voluntary compliance agreement and where we stand. There's been a lot of progress that's been made over the years. The item number 10, so things are numbered, but it doesn't make much sense.
Kathy, your sound's a
So
little
Kathy,
off.
your connection is off.
I don't think it's a headset.
What we may have to do is let her get out and come back in.
Yeah, I'm here, Kathy. So if you want to exit the meeting, I'll let you right back in. I'm watching. And maybe just turn up your volume a little bit. Yeah, I can't hear you at all, Kath.
And I was going to skip ahead to 4D, but I'm guessing that Kathy might be part of that one as well.
Yeah, that would be. Her internet looks good because the video is fine, but can't hear you, Kathy.
I love that she has a backup, just for the record.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Headphones number 3.
I know.
If this doesn't work, she needs to get out, probably relaunch.
Yeah, you're right, Harold.
How about this?
No, you're like roboting out, Kathy. So if you just want to leave it, I'll let you right back in. Sorry, I know it's frustrating.
Cameron, while she's doing that, if you want to go ahead on the city report, I want to do the update operations after E, but if we want to go ahead and ask Lisa to do B and C.
Why don't we do that, Lisa? What? She's back. Maybe we ought to stick with Kathy if she pops in a second here.
Is this any better or no?
No, you're going to have to restart your entire computer and then come in.
All right, why don't we jump to item 5B, the Hearthstone Lodge budget update. Lisa, would you like to take it away?
Sure. I'm excited to say that we have found the money for the Hearthstone and the Lodge to go ahead and implement the pendant system instead of the pull cords that we currently have in place. This will alleviate residents from being on call over hours and responding to the pull cords when somebody's fallen, a smoke detector's going off. This will be an automated system that the residents will either have a wristwatch or a necklace type pendant that they could push, kind of like a life alert. It will only work inside the building. And we hope to get that system approved today or tomorrow and work on getting it installed over the next 10 to 15 days. So we were able to find the money within the budget, different sources, but we're moving forward. So that's really exciting for me because it's been one of my priorities since I started. Anybody have questions on that? It's going through Best Buy as well, so they are backing the system. And then
this is actually, I'm going to jump in with something too that our fire department and our public safety department has been wanting us to do, just because of the unique issues with the pull cords and then individuals responding and then calls for service coming in. And so we're really excited about this on a number of fronts because it does get them connected to someone who can then triage, understand what the issue is, and then make the calls into the appropriate person. And ultimately, we don't then need the people responding from the facility and have to work through those issues. So we think this is an important step. I know Lisa and I have talked about, and I've thought about the potential viability of expanding this to potentially other units as we can. This is a requirement for this facility because it's a 202 property. And so that's why we're having to do this here. But this is something that's definitely on our mind for other locations.
So is this a microphone and a speaker then? It goes.
No, what happens is when the resident activates it, either by pushing the button, tapping the button, they will get a phone call to their phone that they've registered, either their cell phone or their personal phone. And then the dispatcher will, if they don't answer, they'll automatically dispatch EMS. But if the resident answers, they can kind of triage, see what the situation is, if they need police, medical, fire, from there on.
Gotcha.
Or maintenance.
And then if a resident loses, misplaces, are we going to charge the resident for the fee, or are we going to pick up the cost?
They'll have to pay the replacement cost for the device, which I believe is $25.
Well, that sounds like an excellent addition.
Wait, Lisa?
Jean?
Yes.
Yeah. Lisa, is there a provision for when residents accidentally hit that button and
Well,
they're
that's why they
nowhere
will
near
call
their
their
phone?
cell phone or their phone number on call, whatever number they have listed. They'll call and see if it's truly an emergency or if it was an accidental push. But we will also get reports daily and monthly of all the calls. So if we have a resident who's hitting it accidentally, we can always suggest them going from either the watch to the pendant around the neck or some other way of carrying the device.
Okay, yeah, because sometimes that'll happen and they're not within reach of their phone and they don't know they've done it. And but I appreciate, the following up, and I'm glad you're getting the reports. Great.
And Lisa, when you say it works in the building, does it work for like a certain radius outside of the building in case someone has a fall or an emergency just outside the building, like a slip on ice?
They said it should, because there will be 6 repeaters, I believe, 6 to 9 repeaters per building. So it should work on the exterior as well. And the company should be able to detect what repeater it's coming off of. So if they're not in their units, then it should at least say what vicinity of the building they are in.
Okay, that's great.
Excellent. Any more discussion on the Hearthstone and Lodge? And if not, Lisa, you want to talk about 5C, your general update?
Okay, well, we've had a busy month. Hired another manager. She started on the 2nd of February, and so she is full-time at the suites and overseeing Aspen Meadows Senior and Aspen Meadows neighborhood. Her name is Corinne Lindsay. She's here with us now, so that completes our hiring for now. We're getting ready to do a couple audits. We have Hud Audits at the Hearthstone and Lodge this month, and then Aspen Meadows Senior is also going through a file review as well for the rehab. Let's see. And then if we just look at the affordable gross potential rent report, it shows all the availabilities of what units we have rented. We're making some progress. The suite who has the most units available out of the 8, I am excited to say now we have 4 rented. Friday afternoon, another prospect from MHP was contacted and did all their paperwork. So we should be filling at least half those vacancies in the next 2 weeks. Any questions on the vacancies? Questions on any other management items going on? Yes, Arlene.
Arlene, go ahead.
On the Village Place, you've got that you reduced the rent. Does that kind of correspond with the rest of the units that are in there, or is this something new?
We went and reduced the rent on the 2-bedroom 60% unit because it has been vacant for a little over 5 months. And the vacancy loss we've had, we looked at that versus reducing the rent by about $200 to see if we could fill that unit, was a significant difference. So we're hoping to rent that because we do have another 2-bedroom 60% that is on notice as well. So we don't want to be stuck with 2 of them vacant for an extended amount of time.
And what's the poverty level on that? Is it 30 or 40% or 50?
They are a 60% unit.
Okay.
Well, if we have nothing else on 5B or 5C, I see that Kathy has rejoined us. So why don't we jump back to 4C? And I'm crossing my fingers that the audio sounds crystal clear. Oh no, it's not clear.
All right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to put in my prior.
So Kathy, we can hear you a little bit, just faintly.
Out. So maybe I need to just turn
Faintly.
She's gonna try again. So why don't we stick back down to the city report and let's jump back to 5A, Harold, if you don't mind.
Or Molly O'Donnell, I think is also. I thought I saw her.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
there's
fine.
Molly.
So Molly can certainly report on item 5D if you wish.
And then I'll hit
let's
5E
do
in
that.
mine.
And I'm not hearing you, Molly.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. I had a note, it said microphone's not working, so I had to play around. Okay, so I am here to provide an update on the Aspen Meadows Apartments Rehab project. So as of the end of this week, the 19th, we will be 80% complete with interior work. The 3rd floor south wing is a wing that we just completed. The move-in went smoothly for those residents, and right now the 2nd floor south wing is underway. And so that's the one that will be done by the end of this week. Doing those move-ins in 2 days was a challenge, but it went smoothly. We have generally residents who are quite happy with how things went. We have a lot of support on site to make that happen. The gathering room is newly complete. The mailboxes are switched over, the new mailboxes, and operational. The work on the interior during the next 4 weeks will include the completion of that 2nd floor south wing units. And then upcoming will be the 1st floor south wing, and that'll be the completion of all the units. The office and the 1st floor lobby continuation will also occur in this next round starting next week. We are still waiting for our elevator and window replacement schedules because that once the units are complete, that's the last bit that will require relocation assistance. We're still waiting for those. They won't schedule until they have all their orders in place. And with COVID and things, lots of orders for things have been slow. But they will most likely happen after the unit work is complete. So we will be working on that relocation process on a separate track. We are also going to update our resident survey. We did one regarding the elevator and how many residents might be totally dependent on that elevator to access their unit. We did that before construction, but because the elevator work is happening quite a bit later than the beginning of construction, we want to update that. So we'll be doing another outreach effort as soon as we have a schedule. The window replacements are a single day install though. So that's a smaller coordination process. The exterior work that we've done to date is still the substantial completion of the roof. They haven't done anything with the winter weather, but most of the exterior work, including all the windows, will start in March and go through June. The whole job altogether in terms of contract billing is 43% complete. We have a substantial amount of contingency and allowance budgets that we have not had to dip into because things have gone quite smoothly on that front. So we've been working to add some value-added features, and we're working to add some more currently. So we've already decided to go ahead and do the full parking lot paving. Only 2/3 of that lot was included in the budget originally. This will put all our asphalt in the same life cycle. We also got city traffic engineering to agree to restrict parking on 21st, right next to that southeast entrance to the parking lot, just for safety. We've had a lot of close calls or even accidents there. We've also added a common area furnishings package, including the gathering room, the resident business center, which is going to be located now on the 2nd floor, and the property management office. We're going to be doing some safety improvements and ways to improve natural light in that office as well while we're doing this. And then we've already completed an interior signage package to update the look of all the directional signing and unit numbering and make sure it's UFAS compliant. So that's already ongoing. We are currently working on the following items to see if they are feasible. And well, some of them are feasible. We're just working on pricing and scope. The video security system to integrate with other LHA property systems. Landscaping upgrades, including possible garden boxes, because we know residents really enjoy gardening on site, and some patio furniture upgrades and ways to improve irrigation outside. So if there's any questions on that or any other suggestions for things we should look at for our value added features, we would love to have that.
No questions, huh, or suggestions? Well, thank you. That's a great update. It sounds like we're making very good progress on that. Let's move on, Harold, to 5E, the progress on the LHA, LHDC structure and reorganization.
Okay, and I also wanted to add to what Molly's working on. One of the things that we've done, and she mentioned it, is the video security system is really when we started this, we talked about creating consistent using consistent technology across all of our facilities. And that's a couple of things that we've caught. One, the door system is something that we caught, and bringing that so it's consistent with what we have at our other facilities. The cameras, the camera conversation, just for this group to know, is also we've got 2 camera systems, one on the neighborhood, and then this one that interact with each other. The camera system at the neighborhood is old. And if you remember, this is one that we're having a lot of trouble with just getting into the system. And so we're working both of those for the neighborhood and for the apartments, but where they will interact with each other and be essentially on the same platform. The key for this, and this is tied into the security work that we've got the bid at Village Place Apartments to do based on some issues we were having there, is that there's also going to be a web platform, so you have remote access into those systems should you need it. And what we want to do then eventually is have a consistent platform across all the facilities, so that we don't continue having the one-offs as we're moving forward. Lisa didn't talk about that, but that's the same work that she's doing with the maintenance staff right now in terms of things like faucets and sinks. And so we can just do that. And so it's really good work. In terms of the progress on the LHA, LHDC structure reorganization, this is one that we're going to need to spend some time with the board on. The LHA board, which would be the city council members at this time. We have two attorneys working on this issue. One is Chris Gunlickson. You all may have seen Chris in previous conversations because he is doing a lot of the financing. He did a lot of the legal work on the financing work that we've done for many of our facilities. He's actually representing the development corporation. On the housing authority side, we're utilizing and working with Ben Doyle. Ben used to be a county attorney. He's now in private practice, but Ben was the one that actually did all of the work, or most of the work, in terms of the change that they made at the county, and really how the county commissioners became the actual housing authority board, and they worked through their processes. And so Chris and Ben are really giving us two different viewpoints based on their perspectives. We hope to have a report from them in the next couple of weeks. Well, let's say next 2 to 4 weeks, in terms of a, excuse me, a high level report in terms of their recommendation. The big piece on this is there's a couple of things in play. So if you all will remember when we talked to you about the report from Betsy Martins, and she really talked about the change in the HUD conditions and combining the development corporation model with the housing authority, and that really strengthens the financial position of both organizations when you do this, and the fact that HUD now looks at it in a different way than they did when you had to have the development corporation. So that's a piece in terms of the financial side of the equation. What we're also trying to understand is the liability component to this, and how you can carve that liability piece out into each individual housing unit, and whether or not it makes sense to have the development corporation exist in some form based on the liability. And we're going to get, I'm expecting we're going to get two different legal responses on this in terms of what that looks like. And then it really is going to be an evaluation of what is the risk in doing this. But we think that at least in the interim, as we talked about with you all, the development corporation still needs to exist and until we can get to a point to make some final decisions. It also will tie into a little bit in terms of some development opportunities that are coming into play and how we can utilize it. And once Kathy joins, we'll talk about that. But my hope is actually, by April, that no later than April, we have a clear sense of the recommendation we're going to make to both you all and the Housing Authority Board on this issue, and where we want to go and how we want to move there. In this, depending on the path that we take, it could be anywhere from a 9 to 12 month untangling of all of the financial components in many of these properties. And so they will give us a sense of what that will take too, in terms of the time of the actual untangling and moving it into the housing authority, if that's the direction that the board wants to go. Making progress, that was something we kept pushing out because we needed to deal with more of the immediate operational issues. But I should have a report within the next month based on the conversation I had on Friday with our legal representation on this internally. Any questions?
So Harold, my understanding is that the LHDC board is still meeting regularly to.
They're not meeting regular.
How is? Okay.
They're meeting. What we talked about with them is we'll meet as needed, and they will have under their bylaws they have to have, I think, one meeting a year, and there's not a lot of activity, so there's really not a need for them to meet right now. And that's what we had to work with them, because if you'll remember, they wanted to have this completed by the end of the year, and that was impossible. Right. So that was the agreement we had. We're also thinking about options depending on timelines, if we need to find a different way to appoint other board members, if we need to go longer, if they actually want to stop serving in that capacity. So that's some of the things we're going to look at.
Okay.
In terms of update on operations, you all may hear last night we had a sprinkler pipe burst because of the cold at the suites. I want to commend Lisa, Corinne, Dennis, Lydell and the work that they did. We were pretty fortunate. When we went out there, it actually burst in the stairwell. And so in terms of the number of units that were impacted, when we first heard it, it was one of those moments where we're like, oh, how bad is this going to be? Fortunately, when we got in, there were only 3 units that had water in them, at least a lot of water in them. So we made plans working with Karen and the group to relocate 3 people. At the end of the day, we only had to relocate 1 person because 24/7 responded very quickly to get into the units. And, really thankful for them because it wasn't just the housing authority going through this. Apparently, there were many other multifamily units experiencing the same thing. But based on the number of units that were potentially impacted, the work that we've done with them, they were able to respond to our facility. I think they were there within an hour of when they got the call. So it went really well in terms of the water removal. They're going to be there again today to really look at the moisture content in the walls and see what we have to do in terms of a more permanent drying that we need to do and how aggressive we need to be in that process. We are trying to schedule a meeting with the Housing Authority Board. We were going to try to do this in conjunction with our normal city council meetings. And so you all know how we handle the general improvement district. They adjourn as a city council, then they reconvene as the general improvement district. They would do the same thing here. We actually talked to the city council last week about the fact that we have so much stuff we need to go over as they jump into this role and bring your recommendations to them, that we're going to need a special meeting. We're trying to schedule that right now and get that on the books. We may be able to get it. We tried to schedule it midday Friday, just in case you all are interested. Had some folks with some scheduling issues. We could potentially do it from 3 to 5 on Friday. So we're sending out emails. If not, we're going to have to get it next week. And when we do that, we will let you all know. And that may be something where at least the chair, if the chair is available to be part of that conversation and kind of help this transition as we're moving forward. But we will let you all know. Karen, Kathy, have I missed anything? Karen?
So the 2 things that I would add is that last week we had a very successful vaccination clinic at Hearthstone and Lodge, and so and Village Place. So basically, we pretty much had a full day, half day to Hearthstone Lodge, half day at Village Place, and we were able to have 43 total vaccinations at Hearthstone Lodge and 33 at the Village Place. All the vaccinations were used. So Michelle and Lisa and her community managers they had a plan A, plan B, plan C, so that we made sure that we used all of the vaccinations. So we had 70-plus-year-olds, 65 to 69. And then if there were any vaccinations left, we had people on standby so they could come in and get vaccinated. The second clinic is set for Tuesday, February 23rd. And that will basically, that's going to be at Fall River, I believe. And we will target the residents of Fall River, Spring Creek, and Aspen Meadows senior apartments. And so that will be 80 people that we will schedule for that second clinic. So it was a great success, a lot of work, certainly partnering with public health, with King Soopers, which actually provided the vaccinations, and just the gratitude from the residents in our facilities that that they were able to access a vaccination and a vaccine in their own backyard was, was pretty, they were very grateful, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Jean?
Yeah. Yeah, Karen, I'm going to add to that too, because obviously this was a very efficient operation, and there were 2 openings at Hearthstone, and Amy called 2 of the residents here who are extremely vulnerable. And I'm just really delighted how efficient the whole operation went. So kudos to everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think to that point, we talk a lot about, we've talked a lot about what we're doing, but I will also say this has been a unique opportunity for us as a city, because they were able to do this at the facilities. We're now talking about the folks that work for the city who are over 70 who may not have been able to be vaccinated, to see if we can include them in this as well. And so there are, what we're now seeing is the give and take between both sides of the house in terms of how we all help each other in different ways. And I wanted to point that out because a lot of times we focus on this side, but this is a piece where this has really become a great issue for us, the city structure, and the community in general, in terms of being able to have these conversations. This is a model in my conversations on the other side that they're really testing this pop-up piece and how that's going to work as we get more vaccine, so that we can then bring that out and really target other populations within our community. So this is a test for the broader county as well. They've done it in Longmont with the Housing Authority, Boulder Housing Partners, and Boulder County Housing Authority in this testing process.
And the only other announcement that I would make under operations is that we were able to hire, and she started last week, would be our new housing choice voucher specialist. Her name is Rhonda Hill, and so she is now on board. And so we have both housing choice voucher specialists in operation, and yeah, it's good to have pretty full staff. So yeah, so that's nice.
Well, and what I will say, and this is as much for Dennis, Lydell, Corinne, and Lisa, rock stars last night. That was my call to Karen when I left the facility, and went the rock stars. Just seeing the process that they went through, how they were handling the situation. It was different this time. And that's really a testament to the work that they've been doing. I also wanted to let you all know that when you go into facilities, you can get a sense in the feel just how people interact with you and how things are going. And I will tell you that this is where the work that everyone's been doing, where you kind of come away and you go, okay, we're making progress. Interaction has been much different at the suites for me last night during a crisis versus other times, just in terms of the involvement and the interaction that they're having with the folks that live in the facilities, and that's paying off in different ways. And I asked the question to Corinne, how's it going? Because she's in the facility, and she's like, it's fine. And just seeing how they were interacting with both Lisa and Corinne in the process was phenomenal, and how quickly they got a hold of it in this situation. So I wanted to just publicly say, great job, everyone that did it. And it was a much different, it was just different this time around. And so thank you. But I'll also say that I'm seeing that as I move to other facilities and some of the interaction. And, I received a note from an individual at the lodge in Hearthstone, and who's there, I forgot.
Great. Andrea.
And so we're now seeing everything we wanted to see. It's now really starting to take place in terms of the positive relationship that we're seeing with people in the different facilities. So I wanted to add that as part of the operational report. Kathy, Karen, Michelle, everybody's doing a great job in this, and we're now rounding the corner. And so I wanted you all to know that.
Thank you.
Well, it hasn't been easy to get here, so it's great where we are, but I don't want to forget the slog that it was to get here, and it's those of you that are on the screen here that kind of helped us make that progress. So I'm losing track of my alphabet, but I'm looking at section 5. Tom, do you have some input?
Yeah, can I have a quick question on that? It's great to hear that we're fully staffed, but I remember a couple meetings ago, how are we treating the new employees now? Are we having them be city employees, or are they also LHA employees? And I thought we had also talked about that moving possibly the LHA employees over to the city as well.
Yeah, we missed that one. And so that's what we're working on now. So we did get direction. That's part of why we need the meeting with the council as the Housing Authority Board. So on the city side, we did get direction to do that. And I think that was part of why people have been more interested in terms of this conversation. So we are going to move forward with that, but we need to have now the meeting on the Housing Authority Board with the council members so they can give us official direction and we can do this. We've started the conversations, and so some things are going to be pretty easy. Things like health insurance, vision insurance, and we've talked to staff about this already. Those things are going to be pretty easy. The one that's going to take a little more research is actually the retirement side in terms of prior service credit. I mean, how do we deal with these things? And in some ways, this is really going to be focused on the folks that have been here longer and than the new folks, because it's a different issue. And so we've brought Jim Golden in, and we've created a transition team just on this piece to get that done. And our target is March 31st, knowing that depending on what we hear on the retirement side, that could be an overly aggressive target, but we still wanted to set a target date because deadlines stimulate progress on this. At the same time, just so you all know, associated with this is also the move of the individuals. And we talked to staff about this and getting them into the Civic Center with us so that it's honestly easier for us to manage. So Karen's not having to be, and Kathy not in 2 offices, but also get folks closer to me as we continue to evolve in this structure. So those are 2 pieces. That is easier to do, and we hope that we can move that a little more quickly. The challenge on that side is actually the files and where and how do we store the files. We found places and we can figure it out, but for the files, and so we're working on those pieces. So sorry I forgot to mention that, but that's another thing in the mix.
And what I would add to that is that we do have task teams that have formed around that work. So around what Harold talked about earlier in terms of the structure, we have a task team that's looking at the transition of LHA staff to become city staff. We have some of us that are working on the physical move and what the heck to do with those files, because it's kind of a domino effect. So certainly the housing choice voucher specialist staff need their files. They need access to those files, and so there are multiple file storage issues that we're looking at with certainly the LHA, but also with the city and our file storage. So so we do have task teams that have formed. We formed those a couple of weeks ago. To Harold's point is, we just need to get moving. We set some target dates, and even if we have to push those out, we need to have some milestone targets to shoot for.
And just so you all know, as advisory board, and this is important too, and we're going to have to talk to the Housing Authority Board. We have different task teams. I'm on every one of the task teams because from a structural and liability perspective, that decision making has to be in me in this blend as we're moving forward. And so I bring that up because that's going to be an important piece that you'll see in terms of the liability conversations and everything we're having. And then if needed, I will take that to the appropriate board to make the decision, or if it's within my authority in interim executive director role, then I'll make it. But we've got to do that to really compartmentalize all of these issues and keep everything separate.
All right, anything else on the city report that I've glossed over? Seeing nothing, we're gonna hope that the third time is the charm and jump back to Kathy for an update on the voluntary compliance agreement.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah, right.
Oh, beautifully.
My husband gave me the wireless ones for Valentine's Day, and obviously I haven't worked out the kinks yet, so I have to work on that. So for the voluntary compliance agreement, this is the first annual report to HUD that's required. We're going to have to do this report annually until we're out from under the agreement. And again, the numbers for the items don't make any sense, but that is how they were laid out in the HUD agreement. So we're going with them because it's easier to keep track of it. But for you guys, it won't make too much sense. So just a brief update. Number 10, the monetary relief for tenants. I believe the completed status on that first page is really December 11th, 2019. That's when we agreed that this needed to happen. And then it was actually completed with full payout in February of 2020. So I think that that first date's just an error. The fair housing training, the public interest provision, I don't know quite why it's called that, but it's really ensuring that new staff have fair housing training and Section 504 accessibility training. And we have been working on that. Everyone who was in place as of July 21st received training. And then as folks have been hired, we have been identifying additional training for them to take so that we can keep moving on that. Number 12, which is the unit accessibility, is really looking at, and 12 through 16 are kind of all tied together with this. That's the survey of all of our units and all of our common areas in every building, including the admin building and 615 Main. They're all tied together. We have to survey all of those. We have to analyze what needs to happen to become UFAS compliant, which is Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards, which is what HUD requires. It's above and beyond ADA standards, which is what the city code requires. So do an analysis of what needs to happen around that, and then do a transition plan on what the needs are and how we're going to enact the changes that need to happen, whether it's a rehab that can happen within units or whether it is somehow in upcoming buildings making more than the required number of UFAS units, and how are we going to afford that? And that plan, the analysis, the survey, the plan has to be in place and to HUD by November of 2021. So hopefully this summer, as we were talking about, we can get in and start doing inspections of the units and the buildings in a way that makes sense and is still safe and everything. So that's the biggest piece that we still have to take on. And again, that covers number 12 through number 16, basically. Number 15, kind of inserted in that, as you all may know, we were able to do 7 UFAS compliant units as part of the Aspen Meadows Senior Apartments renovation. And we do have a third-party architectural firm inspecting those units. HUD has accepted that firm. And so those units are going to be in full compliance with UFAS. So we'll have 7 units by the time Aspen Meadows Apartments is renovated. So that is helping with that at least. We should not have to go through and survey Aspen Meadows Senior Apartments as part of the overall survey. And then there were a number of policies that we needed to put in place or beef up or enact. And they include number 17, which is the Section 504 Reasonable Accommodation Policy, number 19, which is Effective Communications, number 20, which is the 504 Non-Discrimination Notice, number 21, which is Transfer Policy, and number 23, which is Assistance Animals Policy. Those have all been written, approved by HUD, adopted, and are in place. And we are starting actually later on this morning to roll those out to the community managers to make sure they fully understand them, and then put in place a plan to roll them out to all of our residents in a way that's understandable, that doesn't overwhelm them, and that they know how to access those policies and the rights that are given to them. And then also, how do we incorporate them in providing them to all of our applicants that we might have in the future. And that plan has to be in place by April 15th so we can report back to HUD. We also, as part of the 504 policy number 18, which is logging, tracking the 504 accommodation requests that we received and how we address those. That log has been turned into HUD. We did process 38 requests in 2020. There were 4 denials, and 1 I had requested more information. Everyone else was pretty much approved. 13 of the 38 came from the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and most of those were related to needing an additional bedroom to accommodate either a disability or medical equipment or something like that. And then 25 of them were in our own properties. So just a little trivia for you there on what we had reviewed this year. The transfer policy, what we're finding on not the policy necessarily, but with number 25, which is making sure that there's lease addendums around the ADA units. So if we have people who do not have a disability that are in an ADA designated unit, they just need to understand they can be in there, but if somebody that has a disability needs to go into that unit, they have to transfer to another unit at their own cost. So the policy's in place. We are working with the folks who are in the ADA units that might not have a disability. And we have found there's quite a few more. We're still getting the numbers together, but there's quite a few more than we thought would be applicable in this section. So we are going through those and we're trying to determine, because some of those folks have been in there a long time, in their units a long time. For instance, Village Place, some of them have been in there for a decade or more in an ADA unit. So it's very possible they now could qualify. So going back and seeing what their circumstances are, and can we, through a reasonable accommodation policy, make them eligible for the unit so that they would not have to transfer if somebody else needed it. So there's just a lot of cleanup work that we're trying to do around that. So we'll be working on that, and that is, we've been extended for that until April 15th as well. So we're working on that. We do have a revised application in place and are starting to use that. And we're pulling together the accessible housing list. This is a list of just units that are of properties that should have ADA compliant units. So it's really going back and getting a list, and which I think I have a pretty good list already through my city work of developments over the past 10 years or so that have had to comply with ADA, so that they should have units. We don't have to check and see if they're actually available or anything like that, just that that listing is available to them. And everything else is complete on the record keeping around different data sets and stuff like that. So making progress. Biggest area is going to be the analysis of the units, and then getting some of the policies in place and just normalized within how we distribute those and make those available to folks. Are there any questions on that?
Arlene.
I know this is going to surprise you that I have questions, but they're really sort of a clarification. Under 12, where you're talking the unit accessibility and the 5% of the units have to be accessible, is that 5% per development or per building, or is that total? So of the 461 as compared to, say, for instance, 60 at Spring Creek or Fall River. How does that work?
Yeah, so as a development is built, 5% of all the units have to be compliant normally. But because we're now not compliant, according to HUD, we are compliant with ADA. Let me make that clear. We're compliant with ADA because that is the city's building code and everything met those requirements. It's the UFAS, the additional requirement that we're not compliant with. So HUD reads this that 5% of all units have to be UFAS compliant. That's what we're not compliant with. So probably what's going to happen if we can't go in and retrofit. So for instance, let me give you a for instance. Spring Creek, the units, toilets are 2 inches, have to be, what is it? 12 inches off center, whatever the requirement is.
There's a 2-inch difference.
There's a 2-inch difference. And so the solution is you can carve out a niche so that it moves the drywall over 2 inches, or you can move the toilet so that it is on center. And the problem with that is in some of our apartments, there's radiant floor heating, and that would mess that up. So it's like thousands of dollars to correct it. So if you can't correct whatever the issue is, and that's what the survey is going to tell us, what exactly the issue is in every single unit. If you can't correct it, then the next thing is, well, in your next building, can you build 10% UFAS eligible so that overall the development or our properties, our holdings are going to be compliant? Okay.
All right. So under 16, under alterations, it's saying that, that lists a bunch of different alterations there. If, for instance, one item is done, does that meet the requirement? So, for instance, my question is, if we redo the door hardware, is that going to meet that requirement? Or
it will meet it for that particular area, but if there's still other things that we can't do, then the whole unit isn't going to meet it.
Okay. All right. I know you talked a little bit about how many places are actually accessible. If on your waiting list, you have a person who just needs a regular place and a person who needs an accessible unit, and you have an accessible unit available, how do you determine who gets that?
Well, if the person who needs an accessible unit and there's an accessible unit available, that's where we're going to put them.
Even if they're farther down the waiting list? Or does that make a difference?
No, they do go up to the top of the waiting list if there's a accessibility need and we have a unit available.
Okay.
Right, Lisa, I think that's correct. If all other things being equal, and there's a unit, accessible unit that's available and nobody has a disability, then we're going to offer the unit to get it rented. It's not going to just sit, but then the explanation should be given immediately. This is an ADA unit. We're putting you in here. If you accept it, you could have to
move.
Right, exactly. And there's a lease addendum that they'll need to sign.
Okay. And then last, on 28, where you're talking about ethnicity, race and ethnicity, is this a requirement when people sign up, or is this an option?
They have the option, we have the requirement to report whatever information we get.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I will say that for anyone who wasn't involved at the beginning of the VCA process, this is a good eye opener as to just the complexity of everything involved and just how challenging it is to work through it. But I'm amazed at how thoroughly that you've taken us through it. So I appreciate the work. Any other questions or comments on the VCA report? Tom?
And just a quick question. I mean, this is great to see. And we're on schedule to meet the April 15th deadline.
Yes.
Perfect. That's all I had.
Okay. Let's jump to the Sunset Heights project update.
Harold, you going to do it, or you want me to start?
Why don't you start and then we'll jump in. I'll take the development piece. You take the
Sunset Heights update.
Yeah.
Okay. So Element, who we are partnering with on the Suites property and have a sale option, which they have enacted for at least part of the land. They submitted their application to CHAFA for 9% credits February 2nd, I believe it was. So we have been working with them, continuing to work with them on partnership agreements as well for LHA to be the property manager at that property if they do get funded. And then continuing to work on providing support services as well, which is likely to be either the Boulder Shelter for the homeless or LHA. So still kind of working on that a little bit. So we should find out, I think in May is when they'll start making announcements around who will be funded. It is, I think, looking pretty good. They did apply last time, and usually the second time you're in, you know, barring really heavy competition. And there is, because it's permanent supportive housing, there's a leg up on that. The CHAFA and DOH are particularly looking to fund those types of projects. So we will keep you posted on that. They are carving out the southwest corner for this particular property. So they did move it down, I think, a little bit maybe on the property from what the last time that we had reported to you. So if that is funded, then they are already have submitted some plans to planning to start the development process, and they will subdivide the property then in conjunction with the LHA on what that will look like as we move forward. So kind of exciting. We'll see what happens as we move forward and keep you posted on that.
So I'm gonna share a screen with you all. I'm trying to actually get it down so you can see it. So on the development side, we're working through a couple of issues in terms of replatting and what that's going to look like. Or in this case, a replat was triggered because of the way the property has to be given to Element for this project. And so that's creating some minor issues that we need to deal with. But here is what the site plan is going to look like. So if you can see parking lot here, this is the suites. And then you can see this area here where they're moving it to this location. We're having to work and look at, you know, this point here in terms of ingress, egress to meet fire code. I am going to have some conversations with the Village at the Peaks on this issue. We're tracking down some easements that are showing up on the plat, but we can't really find. So we're going to be working on that in this area. And then that gives us the ability to potentially do something here and then on the back side for additional units. This is, you know, for those of you all that may remember Fall River, this was part of the property that the city purchased to help the financing for Fall River to complete that capital stack, of which now we own 59% of the property, which has created some of the changes in what we're working through now. But to let you all know, in terms of the operational piece, when we met with Kevin, I was pretty much adamant that said, if this is going to happen, the housing authority will be the manager of the property. And that's, again, so you all tie it into the budget. That's what brings additional revenue into the system in order to do this. The question on supportive services, that's a little more nuanced. And so you all know that we have mental health partners at the suites. The supportive side has a lot of requirements with it, which is why Kathy mentioned the Boulder Shelter for the Homeless, because they do that now in partnership with Element. I think what's the name of the property, Kathy? Kester,
Lee Hill.
Lee Hill. So they currently provide that service. So you need somebody who provides it and really knows what they're doing in this case. So that's part of the conversation. That's also part of, do we fit in this? But in the conversation we had last week, it really then is also about connecting these two properties so we have more robust supportive services for everyone in this location. Actually connecting them via technology from an operating expense. It then allows us to we have to monitor who comes in and out of these properties. Well, when you connect it via technology and the system that we've talked about earlier that we're putting in with cameras, it allows one person to do it at one facility or the other, especially overnight. And so there's a lot of things that we're still building into this process, but I'm really excited about this opportunity and what it means for our community. And let's all keep our fingers crossed that they can get the tax credits and we can begin moving forward on this project. Kathy, do you want to tell them about the other one that came up last week?
So in searching through to try and find the private easement that Harold was talking about for Element, I've been going through a lot of the plans and the files and came across a lease agreement that, I just forget the name of the partnership. The investors in Chrisman, the Chrisman developers had for the property that is just to the north of the Chrisman apartment. So it fronts on 66 and is behind the gas station and north of the Chrisman apartments there by Sonic at about 24th and Main area. And so I saw that they had a lease agreement, it looked like, that ran through 2022. And I know they had come to the LHA board right before things started crashing and burning with with Jillian and everything, and had asked to partner and whether or not the LHA could purchase the property and hold it until they were ready to move forward. And the answer was no. And so anyway, I found this agreement. And so I just emailed one of the guys at the Chrisman development, just said, do you still have this lease agreement? And are you still looking to develop? And I did get a response that no, they don't have the lease agreement. They never put it in place, but they've been talking with the owners. The owners are still interested in selling. And if we're still interested, they would still be interested. So Harold and I are going to meet with them next week. I think it's early next week about the possibility. So there might be something coming. We're not sure what that might look like, whether it's another Chrisman-like development or what it would be, but or if it's even feasible, et cetera. But at least we're exploring that. So it just kind of cropped up.
Yeah, and I think why we moved that one along a little bit faster is because, again, revenue generation, and in terms of the agreement and what we get out of it versus what we're putting in, it just makes sense for us to have that conversation.
Jean?
Yeah. I want to clarify. I need clarification here. The lease agreement you found, which Christmas says they don't have a copy of, relates to the apartments that were going to be built or the ones that have already been built in that area?
No, they do have a copy of it. They
Oh, they
were
do.
aware of what it was. They just
Okay.
hadn't entered into it.
Okay.
Or they had let it lapse or whatever. But no, it's for the property to the north. So total new development.
Totally new. Okay.
Mhm.
Because Cameron, if you'll remember, we were told as the board that LHA was going to take over the management of the Christmas apartments that were built a couple of years ago. Do you remember that? Yeah.
I have a vague recollection.
Yeah, that the Christmas apartments got up and running, and then in 5 years, LHA was to take over the management of that also.
Okay. Yeah.
So and when you were talking about the the situation around the suites, I was wondering about where we were with that property, and is that in our to-do list? And it seems to me that we've got about 2 years to go on it before we take it over.
Yeah.
But that's something that I'd like an update on it.
Yeah, so I think the answer is yes, in 5 years, and so we have 2 years to go. So
Yeah.
that's, we will, my intent on something like that would be to probably start prepping a year out. So we still have another year before we start prepping on that.
But if we're doing a new deal with those folks, we can solidify it and bring it back to everyone's attention.
Yeah, that it may change. We may change a lot of things based on if we can do this and what makes the most sense for us operationally and financially in terms of the deal structure on the other side too. So those are all things we'll have to work through.
Well, it is kind of fun to be talking about development deals again, rather than just putting out fires. I know the fires are probably still smoldering, so I don't want to get complacent, but it's another sign that things are starting to gain a little momentum. So we have bounced around our agenda, but I believe, unless someone corrects me, that we've covered everything in 1 through 5 at this point. And so I'm going to turn to item 6 and see if there's any other business that anyone would like to discuss this morning. Arlene.
I just have a question about security at the buildings. Does the security system on the outside doors lock down at a certain time at night so that only people can get in there that have the code to get in, or are the facilities open 24/7?
I'm trying to think through. So on.
Do you want Lisa to take that?
Yeah, because they're different for properties. Yeah. And so I'm trying to, Lisa,
right.
Do you want to jump in?
So all the entry doors are locked 24/7, and they have to either have their fob or a code to get into the building. So that allows only residents or those who have been approved to have a fob get into the building. Otherwise, they have to be buzzed in or let in via calling through the call box at any time of day. The common areas are open and they're not secured, but they're inside the building that is secured.
So to get to the common areas, you'd have to be buzzed in.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we have any other business? All right, if that's the case, we'll move on to item 7, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting today and remind everyone that we have another meeting 1 month from today, which I think would be the 3rd Tuesday of March. If that's correct. So.
Before we adjourn, I just want to let you guys know, depending on how things go with this baby that I'm about to have in the next 7 weeks, I may or may not be here for the March meeting. I'm hoping she comes early and gives me a little relief from this awful pregnancy. So I may not see you next month. I may see you. I might look more miserable than I do now. But keep me in your prayers.
You got it. You got it.
Well, good luck. You are allowed to
Yes.
use that excuse once a year or so. But if it becomes a more frequent issue, we'll have to look into it a little more closely.
And you do not look miserable. So
No.
you're hiding it well. So,
I've been practicing. I think I'm experiencing early prodromal labor. So it's like not quite Braxton Hicks, but it's not labor either. It's like right in the middle and it's not fun.
well, we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah, wish you all the best as my two are getting ready. One leaves to college next year, the other the year after. Just take advantage of the time because I'm having a moment right now where I'm going, man, it went fast. So
I know. I have a 3-year-old and then I'll have another and that's it. And I'm just like, wow, I have 18 summers. 18 summers and that's it. And it's sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Holly?
Well, thank you.
Trust me, they'll be back.
I hope not. I will welcome them back home if ever, but hopefully they won't need to by then.
Always do.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, that's a great way to wrap up the meeting.
You got it. Yeah. And I will move to adjourn.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor? Good to go.
Yep.
We'll see you next month. Thank you.